I will not make any deals with you. I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own.
Chapter 13, verse 14. But when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let him read and understand, then let them be in Judea flee into the mountains. And then they talk about the rooftops, get off the rooftops, all that stuff. Or don't be on the rooftop, I guess. Or get down off the rooftops. But the point is, there's that abomination of desolation. Boy, pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. Now, there is a slight rabbit trail of kind of science fiction, interesting diversion here. And then we'll get back on track. And that is, there is some substantial, pretty good archaeological evidence that the Jews may actually be sitting on that Ark of the Covenant. And they actually know where the Ark is. Some of the old vessels are. Some even say that they even know where the old original Moses tabernacle is, that it was buried underground, it was hidden. There's one archaeologist I'll mention maybe in another video that's, I even heard him teach and preach in the late 90s. And I think he's really legit and makes a lot of sense to me. So we'll maybe do a little separate teaching on that. That'd be kind of a fun teaching to do. But yeah, don't think that God hasn't preserved some of these ancient artifacts for this time. So anyway, interesting. Back on track here. We're going to talk about how tough it is. Hate to say it, but that's what we're talking about here. And in verses 19, and we're still in Mark chapter 13. Mark chapter 13. Now we're going to skip into verses 19 through 20. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from... That's interesting. He didn't use tribulation, he used affliction. That's pretty cool. As a different descriptive word. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of creation, which God created unto this time, neither shall be. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he has shortened those days. Anyway, yeah, interesting. Well, let's skip down to verse 24. But in those days after that tribulation, the sun shall be dark, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in the heaven shall be shaken. Okay, and that's just before the coming of Jesus, and hopefully we're out of there by that point. Hopefully. Good chance we are. But anyway, so that's interesting. Now, they talked about how there was the affliction was not from the beginning of creation, which God unto this time. So things are going to be worse during this tribulation than any other time on the earth. So picture, I can see some kind of dramatic images like modern day World War I. World War I trench warfare in France, where millions of soldiers died in that horrendous period. That was really bad. Well, that doesn't compare to apparently what's going to be coming on the earth. So, but that's sobering, I think, and sad too, obviously. Let's move on. We're on our way to the book of Revelation, but let's take a quick stop in 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Now, this is the, in my book, the famous pushback against the pre-trib doctrine, which I believe is false, untrue, not very provable, has a lot of holes in it like Swiss cheese. Whereas the mid-trib and the post-trib, decent, strong arguments for both those. I would give a stronger argument for the mid-trib. That's what I hold to. But let's just, because this will actually help kind of know the times and season we're in. So in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, let's start in verse 2. That ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. Okay, that's probably further than I should have gone. But anyway, the point here is that there's a couple good little points, good nuggets here. Verse 2, it says, be not shaken in mind or troubled. Don't listen to fairy tales. This is the Apostle Paul speaking to the church of Thessalonians. And then verse 3, let no man deceive you, for that day, the coming back of Jesus, which happens at the midpoint of the tribulation, or at comes the true coming back at the end of tribulation, where he does finally set up the millennial reign of Christ for 1,000 years. The rapture hopefully happens mid-trib. But anyway, and we'll get into that and some other things. But verse 3, let no man deceive you by any, for that day shall not come except there coming a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. So before there's any kind of rapture, whether you believe in pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib, the Antichrist is shown. He's revealed. It says it plain as day right here, except they're coming a falling away first, which will be a lot of people, like we talked, getting burned out on how terrible things are in general during the tribulation period, and that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. So the Antichrist will be revealed. So that's good for us prophecy students. Let's say we miss the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, okay? Because we're not paying attention. I don't think you can miss it, but you might be able to. But certainly when he goes in to the temple, the abomination of desolation, 3.5 years into the 7-year period, yeah, you're going to hear about it. It's going to be on the world news. You're going to know about it. And that's when he probably breaks the treaty he probably breaks the Daniel 9:27 treaty before that. But I'll get into that in a minute. But so he's showing himself as God. So you will see the Antichrist before there's any church rapture or taken out of here. That means there'll be world government. That means there'll be persecutions. That'll means there'll be bad things happening before any Christian gets raptured out of here. So sorry, but that's just the way it is. All right, now I think we're finally ready to kind of go for the home plate here, so to speak. Book of Revelation, chapter 6. And just to let you know, a lot happens in chapter 6 and chapter 7. Wow, you could preach hours on it, but we won't. But let's just jump in, and it kind of preaches itself, and then I'm going to go back over some of the key verses and dissect it a bit for you. So, reading in Revelation chapter 6, starting in verse 1. And I saw, when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, come and see. And I saw and beheld a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat therein to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And behold, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, come and see. And I looked and beheld a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill the sword, with hunger and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for their testimony which they held. Okay, and I'm just going to stop there in verse 9. Wow, there is so much happening there. So let me back up here. And how does that apply to us proving our original purpose for these last few episodes that we're doing of Captain Mike? And that is, how can you tell when the tribulation starts? Well, this is where the rubber meets the road, and where it's going to get a little bit tricky to dissect. But I think we can come out of this feeling pretty good about a position that I'm taking, and you may want to take after hearing me. Okay, so here's the important thing of chapter 6. So verse the seal, first of all, the seals are open. There's 7 seals, and there's 7 trumpets, and there's 7 vials throughout the book of Revelation. That pretty much summarizes the whole 7-year tribulation, judgments, and wrath of God being poured out on man, etc. But in the horses, let's talk about the horses. Chapter 6, verse 2. A white horse, and he that sat him had a bow and a crown was given him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Okay, so this, a lot of people think it's the Antichrist. I don't, it could be, but I give it 50-50. It's probably just an angel that God's released to go out and do conquering and destruction. And then the second seal was a red horse in verse 4, and power was unto him to take peace from the earth. So the first 2 horses, the pale horse, the red horse, are war horses basically. One goes out to conquer, one's a leader, and the other one takes peace from the earth where men start fighting with each other. Okay, and so that's what those 2 horses do. The pale and the red horse are kind of bedfellows, so to speak. Okay, verse 5, the third seal, and I come and see, and beheld, there was a black horse, and he had a pair of balances in hand. Anyway, it goes on to say measure of wheat, barley, etc., etc. Basically, that's economic woes, famines. You have to basically a day wages to get even enough for one person to eat is what that really works out to if you do the math in there. We don't have time to do that. So you've got war, you've got starvation starting to happen. Okay. And then the 4th seal, and I looked and beheld, was a pale horse, and his name that sat on it was Death, and hell followed with him. And power is, okay, so that's death, that's probably disease, pestilence. There's famine, there's the sword, there's pestilence. That's kind of even Old Testament principle of how bad things happen in judgments, the heathen and the righteous kingdoms in the Old Testament. It was war, it was famine, and then it was pestilence. It was diseases. So and that's nothing new under the sun, as Solomon says. So that's what we're going to be faced with in the tribulation. And that's what these horses symbolize. But I think what's really important is in verse 8, realize that in verse 8, it basically says, and power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. So, of the 8 billion people on the planet during this early part of the tribulation, I don't believe this is all the way, I think more than this die. But basically around a quarter of 8, right? So that's like 2.5 billion people somewhere in there die before the rapture happens. Let that sink into you for a minute. 1/4 of the Earth's current population, 2.5 billion people, maybe as high as 3 billion people, die before the church is taken out. I'm sorry, it's hard. That's why we need to prepare our hearts and minds for really tough stuff. So just know that there's a lot of wars, a lot of death, and a lot of destruction. And we as Christians have just got to know our God and stay in the truth, stay in love, stay in peace. Don't turn our back on Jesus. Know that he's going to be faithful to get us through all this, even unto death if necessary. Anyhow, I just want that to sink in for
another Captain Mike show. Thank you for joining us. If you like this teaching, please consider donating by clicking on the PayPal link in the description area of this video. If you would like to contact me directly, you may email me at thecaptainmikeshow@yahoo.com. Remember Acts 4:12. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. Speaking of Jesus Christ. And also, please remember John 14:6. Jesus say unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. Blessings to all of you, and until next time, be seeing you.
Seeing you.